Let's get reading it. Mountains and mountains. A river flowing down from it. When I see it, I don't see it. Hi, tell me, what is it? There's something inside you. It sounds so familiar. May I remind you? What is it? Come on and tell me. Go on, remind me. What is it? Afraid I'm not hearing it. What is it? Afraid I'm not hearing it. Little like back to chatting, sitting, fights for chilling, yeah, found myself slipping in it. Mountains and mountains, and a river flowing down from it, yeah. When I see it, I don't see it. Hi, yeah, tell me alright. What is it? When I see it, I don't see it. Hi. What is it?
Hello, and welcome back to Place of Assembly. I'm your host, Sam Hilmer. This is a program produced by Hollow, venue in Queens, NYC, co-produced collaboratively with Experimental Sound Studio Chicago and 8 Ball Radio. We have an incredible episode tonight that I'm very much looking forward to, and I feel super honored to have these folks on the podcast. We have Will's GLASSPIEGEL and Litebulb from the Era Footwork Crew. There is a lot to say about the Era. There's a lot to say about footwork. It's a fascinating medium, dance form, music form. Native to Chicago, for those of you who don't know. The Era is an incredible group, and they've made incredible headway as a group and for the medium, for the art form. These are folks who've gotten up in their world, in their lane of dance and electronic music. They're also musicians that produce their own music. They've collaborated with Chance the Rapper. They've worked with all of the great footwork DJs, DJ Rashad, Traxman, Spinn, to name a few. And but importantly, they've also made headway in the fine arts world, the dance world, and also in the not-for-profit sector. As a not-for-profit, they've got a group called Open the Circle that is doing work in schools. They got a summer camp, and they're kind of working a lot in neighborhoods where footwork originated. They're going to tell you all about that. And then in the fine arts world, they've done things like a MCA, Chicago Takeover, PS-1, venues like this. And this is just a really fascinating model for a crew like this, getting up in this way and kind of moving in so many directions and taking so much of the cultural sphere as their own and doing their thing. So with no further ado, we're going to learn from these people. And I want to make it clear, I'm here to learn tonight. This is something that I love, but that I know very little about. So this is an incredible opportunity for me to be a student. So Will's GLASSPIEGEL, Litebulb, the Era Footwork Crew. Come on, folks. Hey, Litebulb, what's up?
What's the deal, man? How y'all feeling out there, man? How we doing?
You know, one foot in front of the other, man. We're just we're here for the ride and this experience.
Yes,
Wills, what's up?
Sir.
Great to see you, Sam. Thanks for having us, man.
Appreciate you, brother, man. Appreciate you, man. Great to see you again, might I add.
I know. I did have the pleasure of meeting Litebulb in the Era at a little venue in Chicago where we did an interesting little open format gig. And if I remember correctly, I posted some really passionate Instagram posts kind of shouting you guys out and talking about footwork and Chicago and community. And I was really moved by the whole thing. So getting to follow up with you in this way is really a special and important experience for me. So I'm gonna, like I was saying, as we were chatting before the show, a lot of the times, well, I shouldn't even say a lot of the times, this is only the 5th episode of this podcast, but I've been kind of coming out of the gate with like a deep cut, kind of hot take, edgy question. But tonight, I'm going to ask a really remedial question to reinforce this dynamic of me being the student tonight. And that is, what is footwork? Where does it come from? What is footwork dance? However you want to take it. Fascinated to hear your response.
Okay. Footwork. Okay, footwork, I mean, to me per se, footwork in Chicago, true art form, true culture, meaning, every other form of art to more or less is kind of brought into Chicago. This is the form that was created here by Black children as well. That's a big part of it too. And footwork is, I want to say, the future of where house music went to, more or less. It went from house music to ghetto house to juke music to Chicago footwork, what we have today. And it started off in the mid-1980s. The dance was here first. They were doing certain moves called ghosts, specifically in animations, to house music. And over the years, that kind of transformed. Dancers like R.P. Boo, Rashad, Spinn, all of these people, mainly R.P. Boo, wanted to figure out a way to match the music to the dance, to the way he danced per se, which was, they were trying to find out what kind of pace to be at. It would start off at like 140, then it moved to 160, and that's where they landed at. And like I say, DJ Clint, DJ Rashad, DJ Spinn, and R.P. Boo, these are like the Tracksman as well. These are the forefathers of the music. Tracksman knows the people who originated, who made up the first Ghost. You have footwork dancers in groups like House-O-Matics, U5, UK59. These were all like legendary groups that were prominent back in those times. And this was before battle groups came about. Chicago has its own dance community, local talent, and House-O-Matics is one of the main groups from, I want to say the late 80s to the mid 90s, one of the top crews that was traveling around the world, traveling around the States to do shows and performances. That was huge for Black people in Chicago to see their dancers doing this. So again, the dance was here first, and then the music came later. And we're talking the mid 1980s to the 1990s. And you get a person like Anthony Brown, who comes from House-O-Matics, who helped create the form, who helped expand upon the form. As far as what you see, some of the moves you see is the irk and jerks, the skates, the shake and beat. These are all foundational footwork moves that exist within the form itself, the dance form I'm talking about. And the DJs were dancers. There was no cross. That's what people need, to get misconstrued. Everybody who was a DJ more or less from Chicago was a dancer or was a part of a dance group. And that goes for all of them, more or less. So when you get to the dance form, Anthony Brown comes from, he's not a DJ, he's a footwork dancer. He's like, we consider him like some people say Michael Jordan. I like to say like Wilt Chamberlain, like he fostered, the way the foundation is of footwork as far as like adding the irk and jerks. He expanded because the way that the Ghost looks, it was a single move, but you could do it different ways and variations. But when he came in, actually came with the foot movements, the irk and jerks, the skates, that transformed footwork and he's from the South Side. The Ghost footwork is originally from the West Side of Chicago. The South Side came and more or less elevated the form, added to it. The East Side added to it. The North Side added to it. You know what I mean? But Anthony Brown was like the forefather who helped pretty much advance the form for what it originally was. So then from there, you instead of having just dance groups or doing, hip hop choreography or Chicago hip hop choreography, more or less, they're doing, it's just all footwork crews. Just like, just like in New York, you got breakdance, it was just breaking crews. Like now it's just now Anthony Brown helped foster just off his name, help create groups like Wolfpack. He knew people, out west that like Nick the Man who had groups, um, and these groups transformed over the years, and like that just created a whole like a shockwave, man. Like just a footwork craze. I can remember times when footwork just had these peaks of up and down where it was seen in these spotlights, seen with Missy Elliott, seen here, seen there, because Chicago is Chicago. If you're from Chicago, you know about footwork. Like you know about the culture, especially if you're black from Chicago on the south side or the west side, you definitely know about it. But over the years, footwork expanded. The DJs got opportunities to, take their music outside of what was that group? Dance Mania. I know a lot of them. I know a lot of DJs were doing music with Dance Mania back then. They broke away from that and formed their own associations and and different labels and things like that. And they blew up. I know Rashad was one of the first ones that really Rashad and Spinn, respectively, like that made a huge jump. And when they made that jump, they brought the dances with them, which was different. They went out on their own for the most part, expanding in music. The footworkers came later because it was like, man, we got to keep it original and bring out people who we know really do this to the top, to the highest ability. I just happened to be like one of the youngest people that was doing it at the top level at that time. And DJ Spinn asked me to come on tour, which the Planet Moon tour back in, what was that, 2010, I believe. And I was like the first time footwork dancers and footwork DJs traveled together overseas from Chicago. And it was major, man. Like it's like Rashad and them blew up even more. You know, I I could, as other footworkers faded in, I continued to be, the footworker that came on tour and was like, create a name for myself as being one of the, top performers that was with Rashad and Spinn. Like, half the time it was, man, just us three on, doing a lot of the shows after that first Planet Moon tour. So, footwork, has had its roller coaster. Now, you've had other people in the industry as well who put in work. You got groups like Creation, Goon Squad, all kinds of groups that are in Chicago who've been putting in work over the past, decade. I just, Terror Squad being one of the most prominent groups that I'm from, they back around that one, moving things along the well. So these battle crews that Anthony Brown helped initiate and start, it just evolved over time. You had events taking place, people performing at auto shows, performing at the Bud Billiken Parade. The Bud Billiken Parade is the longest black running parade in Chicago. And it's every year. It was this year, which was a huge hit because of COVID. Damn you, COVID. But footwork was a major thing, still is, but it's just so up and down, man. It's like these past 5 to 6 years since we made the Era, and really have been pushing, that Chicago, working from Chicago to other places has been like a real key in helping propel footwork and transform the opportunities that come to footwork and also its reach. So, footwork has had a long 30-year history. That's short for some people, but for footwork, man, that's a long time because it's been so many roller coasters with it.
That's a long time for any scene, I think, really. I mean, there's certain musical and dance forms that we think of, lasting hundreds of years and whatnot. But if you think just about every kind of form, whether it be dance or music, that somehow gets a name and people start saying it, 30 years is a long time. There's a lot of these things that people start saying the name of something. It's only around for 2 or 3 years, you know what I mean? And then you're like, remember that? You know what I mean? So I think 30 years is a long time by any measure, and it seems like it's going strong. So that's amazing.
I'm super happy though, man. I'm just happy. I'm happy. I'm happy with the, in the grand scheme of things, taking a step back, looking at what futures are ahead for footwork. I'm happy about that.
That's amazing. I'm happy as well. You said a bunch of things in there that bring up questions for me and things that I want to ask, but I also want to get Wills in here. Wills, you want to jump in and augment, add anything?
Oh, I thought that was a great epic tale of our amazing dance here in Chicago. I could say how I got involved and maybe drop in a few other bits of context. I'm from Chicago, but I lived in New York for most of my 20s. But when I was in my late 20s, about my late 20s, I I heard footwork music for the first time. I heard DJ Rashad's music for the first time. This is about 2009. And I was just instantly, it was like a dream music for me. It was like everything that I'd wanted to hear in music was happening and then some. And it happened to be from my hometown. So I did a story about footwork, kind of like you, Sam, just to learn about it as a journalist. At the time I was working for NPR Music and also All Things Considered. And that just really gave me an excuse to get close to these artists that, you know, really have now become some of my closest collaborators, friends, and have really directed the currents of my life to a large degree. So that first trip was in about 2010, I guess about 10 years ago. And that was me coming back home to Chicago from New York. And since then I've moved back several times. And really just done so much with footwork, from being a documentarian to actually getting to do like extensive creative work alongside these artists and dear friends of mine. So I really, over the last 10 years, have kind of blossomed my film practice. I think I got involved with footwork because it was like the music captivated me, but then as a you know, at that time, kind of an amateur filmmaker and photographer, I'd done a little bit of work. Dance really just inspired me as a subject. I said, this is an amazing storytelling engine or storytelling force that's going on. And I channel that. And I think as I was thinking about how do I channel that, I ran across Litebulb. I was working on I think it was a documentary for Vice. You know, I have mixed feelings about Vice, but I was using these journalistic opportunities to kind of like get more involved in other sorts of ways. And when I was working on that piece for Vice, I showed it to Litebulb at Battlegrounds before it aired. And I said, what do you think? You know, like, is this good? And he loved it. I think his feedback was just so genuine and positive. And I think that was a big turning point for my career, which was like, oh, I actually care more about what Litebulb thinks of this than I do what the editor at Vice who's paying me thinks of this. So I need to like recognize that and recognize who I do my work for. And that's just caused me to shift my perspective in so many ways. And there's a lot to tell, but right now we're working on a ton of projects. You know, the relationship between filmmakers and dancers, I think, is also maybe something we can get into a little bit, but it's just like a really symbiotic meeting of two different art forms, just because dancers usually need filmmakers to capture what they do. And especially footwork, it moves so fast and it's so kind of evanescent in certain ways and so hard to capture, that I found that my services were really useful to dancers like Litebulb and others. And really together we started to work on some grants and bring footwork into this kind of grant funding landscape out here in Chicago. Litebulb, like 4 or 5 years ago, won probably the first major grant for a footwork dancer, which was like a $15,000 dance grant from an organization called Chicago Dance Makers Forum. And since then, you know, we've you know, in our way, changed the landscape of dance in the region and maybe even nationally. So that organization that gave the grant to Litebulb, they've now granted other footwork dancers, another dancer in our group, Stilo, Sterling Loft. He won a $20K grant this year. And beyond that, as you said, we were able to get this major grant from the New England Foundation for the Arts for the show that we're working on now, which is called In the WURKZ. And that's just a kind of a mixed media, all the different forms of art combined together with footwork as the driving force to tell, you know, personal stories and stories of the city through dance and this, you know, indigenous, or I should say Black indigenous, you know, using the word indigenous is tricky, but I should say a Black dance that's indigenous to Chicago. We've been able to take this really, really. And actually, we've been working with indigenous dancers, and so that's another thing we could talk about. We just released a film in honor of Indigenous Peoples Day. So there's so I don't even know where to start.
I saw that. That is something that we should get into. But I now have so many threads to follow up on from hearing all of that. But just to grab onto that last point for a second, just to bring this home, because I think it's a really important point, and we were talking about it earlier today. that grant that you mentioned, which I wanted to include in my intro, but then when I came around to do it, I knew I couldn't remember it exactly right, and I didn't want to mess it up. But I'm glad you mentioned it. But it's like, that's a major grant. Like, that's like a grant that people who maybe you would think of as you'd go see them at the Met or the Guggenheim or something get this grant. Like, this is like a
Yeah, for
big,
dance, this is it.
yeah, this is like a big deal, like among the biggest deals in the dance world to win that grant that you just mentioned, right? So yeah, and that's, I think, really a fascinating and really important point, because, I mean, you know, this isn't my area of expertise, but are you able to think of another crew stemming from a regional African American dance form that has achieved in that way? I mean, there's many important achievements, of course, but like specifically kind of gotten up in this granting world, like contemporary, like, of course, if you go back in time, you know.
I have to do my research, but I can't think of any first. I know we want some of the first for Chicago for sure.
Right, for sure. So yeah, I just want to underscore that it's not like you're a footwork crew and you're doing the footwork thing with that music on that scene, and every now and then you get a little grant. It's actually, you're actually like really getting up in that world, which is really impressive and important. So doubling back on some of the things that came up, the first point that came up when you were talking that I wanted to follow up on and just underscore, because this is something that I learned today, was the piece about that the producers and the DJs who established footwork music did that in response to the dance that was originally being danced to house music in Chicago.
Yep.
So one thing I'm wondering is, how was it that the dance form was happening, but it must have been happening in some way at a lower tempo, or just, explain that to me. And what about what was happening at that time made those producers want to push it ultimately to 160?
Okay, it's like two different things. First part about them dances, like house music generally, what beat per minute is house music at? I'm trying to remember.
110 to 120?
30 or something.
130. So like it's close to where footwork was headed. So it was already kind of like fast paced house music. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So the dancing kind of like just went the way they dance just went hand in hand with that. And the music side of it is like they were in Dance Mania, and like they were like the little bros to everybody in Dance Mania. So it was kind of like upset that Dance Mania wasn't giving them like all the opportunities that they wanted. So like the music was kind of a response to that in a way. Like they wanted to like shit on more or less everybody that was like, because they super competitive at the same time. Like I don't know if RP Blue was on that, but I know Spinn and Rashad definitely like had like a quarrel more or less with the people, like the house DJs that like weren't letting them in, more or less, you know, like ghetto DJs. So like it was like a response to it. Like they just started using, like nobody was really using samples like that either. So like they kind of like just started like meshing together like this specific sound that like was different than that, like that was different than 140. They was like, we want to be at 160 because it's different. This footwork. This not house music. You know what I mean? Like this is footwork. So it kind of was a response, but that's where it comes from though. Like as far as like its origins. Like, but it's a response in a way to like shit on all of the DJs that was upper in the ranks that had deals and everything that wasn't really giving out opportunities to them. Like kind of like a battle. It more or less is what they was on. I know for sure. Like I know Tracks had opportunities with Dance Mania. I know a lot of them did, but like
so Litebulb, can you just kind of break down what Dance Mania is?
Dance Mania is I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's a house music label is it from Chicago Woods?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's one of the most esteemed house music labels, and also known for popularizing a style of music that's known as ghetto house. Yep. So very popular in the 90s. And so you kind of have like a first generation of house folks in the 80s. Yeah. The 90s comes around, and a lot of the European histories of house music here in Chicago, they tend to erase the 90s just because they want to talk about what happened in London in the 90s rather than out here in Chicago. But what happened in Chicago was Dance Mania. And I think RPB actually has like one track on
Yeah.
record that like half came out on Dance Mania.
Ooh, that probably stung.
Something happened. But then after that, you have the generation of DJs that folks don't know too much about outside of Chicago. Litebulb mentioned a group called the Ghetto DJs, but they were releasing a lot of music on colored mixtapes. So there's a thing called color tapes out here, and some of those mixes are on YouTube, and they're incredible. Yeah, but Sam, to your original question, maybe I could add a few little other things. So I think that the West Side also claimed some responsibility. The West Side of Chicago claimed some responsibility for speeding up house music.
Tracksman is
justified to me. Tracksman is a great guy to talk to about that. I think that comes from speeding up. Playing records on 33 at 45. I think that was something that really could excite a dance floor and speak to dancers and get them revved up, get the feet moving. And then, as Litebulb said, I think it also became a way of distinguishing the next generation of house music from the generations before it. And that was certainly important for all the footwork DJs to, I think when I met folks, they didn't tell me exactly what the connection was to house music, because it was a question of how much is this house music and how much is this footwork? Is it something new? And I think it's a both and interesting area of inquiry.
Yeah, I just remember them stories Rashad and Spinn used to tell about. They just mad, man. They like not like we come from a competitive. This is a competitive culture. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what that's what I remember about it most. You know what I'm saying? And they just didn't use to talk like they had they rocked with some of the people that was in dance, man. They didn't hate everybody, but I just know like it was certain things that they didn't like about that era of people that was working back then or in the house music industry.
I think it still goes on. I mean, I think people don't know what house is like in Chicago because it is so big. I mean, like footwork, it's been around for so long. So there's so many different camps and different ways of kind of consolidating power. But I think there's not enough intergenerational flow. And so Rashad and Spinn were definitely facing that out.
Yeah, it started after them. Like they started like mingling and working with the next generation after Rashad. Like once Rashad and them made their lane into like Rashad and Arthur Builder had their lane with footwork. That's when it started. The generation started to mingle because they really they have relationships with DJ Dion and like Milton, people like that from Ghetto House. You know what I mean? That's still around. It's a few other people. I can't remember everybody's names. What's his name? Wills. Sluggo, who was not Sluggo was like Jude.
Sam and Gerald, this is
girl, people like that. You're right. There was one more too though. The Rashad tribute reunion party.
I'm trying to remember. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I can't even remember. But either way, it was a certain few DJs they was quite that it was cool with. But like, once they got, I feel like yeah, there you go. You know what I mean? Like it was certain people that they really just was like cool with, and some people that they just wasn't, and it was like really upset that the opportunities wasn't there for them. They had to make their own. Like they go getters, man. I can't really put that's about the best words I can put it in. Like they just.
Sam, it reminds me a little bit of jazz, and I think these comparisons, are interesting. Like, people talk about conservatism in jazz and how one generation, like the Wynton Marsalis clique, has to say what jazz is and define it, and they keep certain people in and certain people out. I think that you could make some comparisons to how the history of house music is played out here in Chicago as well, and those debates are still kind of being discussed.
Well, right. I mean, it's a classic and effective strategic thing to do when you're not being let into the conversation, to refuse to be understood in the terms that conversation is happening in, but rather draw a different circle and exist inside that. And then like the energy of discovering something so fresh has a kind of magnetism to it. And then like Litebulb, what you were saying was kind of like after they did that, then people started to come over from the other side and be like, oh, hey, actually, maybe we could work together. You know what I mean? Which, and to be honest, like having been a younger cat and now being older, whether I like it or not, like I can actually see it from both sides, because it's like you come around, you're 20, 21, and there's folks who've been putting in time for 25 years, and you're like, yo, let me get in this.
Too.
Yeah,
They might have
exactly.
been that too, though.
What? Say that again.
They might have been younger than 20 though, like 21. They might have been in 18, like in 18.
Right. No, I remember.
Trying to get deals.
I remember because I've presented tracks a bunch of times, and he was telling me that he'd been DJing since he was 16 or something.
Yeah, like they was babies, man. They was young. They was young doing it. Like the whole, like the culture is just it's a youthful thing. Like it was kids. They had nothing to do.
But that's fascinating. I'm really glad I asked that question. So essentially, it was like you're saying they were getting shit on and they needed to chart their own course in order to kind of create opportunity and create magnetism around them, and then they kind of like made a lane. Yeah.
I mean, they was the shit in their own lane though. Like they was the shit from what I remember from kids. They was the shit already. They was a house of Maddox. You was a house of Maddox. You was the shit, and it was the DJs. Right. Was playing the tracks for all of the dance groups at one point. He was they would make the performance CDs for the dance groups. They was in the group, so they was making their music. Right. So they had their own crowds already. They just wasn't like as far as like being able to expand in the actual music industry. These were local groups. You know what I'm saying? So like as far as like getting a deal or getting labeled, no, they wasn't getting that. They wasn't getting that at all by far because the disconnect between them and I really can't explain. Just they had a disconnect between them. I don't know if it was bad or when some business went bad. I don't know, but I just know that they wasn't connected with them in those times. And like in the result, they made this music, and the dance groups was dancing to it. So it kind of like spread. Like that's how it kind of like spread because these DJs was making music for the dance groups, and like the dance groups would have parties. You had the Barbican parade would have parties. It was parties all the time, so they would be the DJs there playing this music, and you know.
Right.
Okay. Let me jump in real quick. I think one interesting thing would be to think about the role of the internet for Spinn and Rashad too.
Yeah.
Because I think it did. You got to look at it as helping us. I don't want to overly give credit to the internet because I think people do that. But you got to say it helped them get around some of these barricades. You know, release their music and get the music to Detroit, for instance. And, you know, on and some of these file sharing services was later, but I do think the internet was also a generational divide between kind of Spinn and Rashad's rise versus some of these earlier generations of Get On.
Yeah, that was the key to my rise.
Right.
I was one of the first footworkers on YouTube. Besides people like Charles and everybody else that was on YouTube. Like I was the next one for my generation.
Right. All right. Well, okay. Noted. Got it. That's interesting. So I want to now jump on to something that Will said when he was kind of adding on to what you said, which was that in addition to the musical form stemming out of the dance, kind of in response to this back and forth between these two communities, this kind of intergenerational tug of war or whatever was going on, you said also that the West Side claimed some responsibility for speeding it up. And that was something also that Litebulb, you touched on in your description when you were describing footwork, was that the dance itself kind of evolved through contributions from different communities from different parts of the city.
Yep.
And I'm interested to hear more about that. I mean, this podcast is called Place of Assembly, and I do try to kind of sometimes bring things back down into like anchoring it into an attitude about space or geography or a sense of place. And so that's of interest to me that that somehow communities from diverse geographic locations throughout the city participated in creating this assemblage that became this dance form. So, I mean, is there more to say about that? Because if so, I'm all ears.
I mean, Pete, now this was interesting. It's different, but depending on what side of Chicago you on or what lineage you came from, you had everybody had the same form, but it was different styles of footwork. Okay, so on the east side of Chicago and the north side, you had groups like Goon Squad, right? The south suburbs, and look, that's not even like the most current, because like we had groups way back when, like it was tons of groups, right? But I'm just speaking on the most prominent ones that lasted over time. You had Terror Squad that was like south suburbs, the city, kind of. Then you had groups like Creation that was just in the burbs, just in the suburbs. You had groups like Wolfpack that's before Terror Squad and Creation. You know what I'm saying? Like they ran the 90s and you know what I'm saying? And like, but like everybody in Terror Squad, Taliban, with DJ Mania's group, he was DJ Mania's like he helped start Taliban. He's a part of that group. Again, another DJ, that's a dancer. Okay. So we all got this same lineage from Anthony Brown, which was one of the dance I spoke of that helped create the, pretty much advanced the form. It's a certain way that you dance if you're from this particular lineage. It's a certain way, and everybody got these, creators of different styles from different groups. But Ant fostered the way a lot of us dance. But we took those moves and created different styles that went into footwork. So you had people like you said, you had Goon Squad over here that was up north. You had, Below Zero that was from where I lived on my side of town, but I wasn't a part of that group around like the Southwest. Havoc that I was in Harvey, and Creation was in Markham. You had you just scattered groups all over, and everybody had their own different style. Creation, they had their own style completely. They don't even have the lineage of Aaron Brown. They got a whole different type of lineage, which is interesting, because that can happen. People can just break off and do their own thing and make their own type of form and style. But that's just what happens. Most groups have families. You know what I'm saying? So everybody made a contribution to footwork and the way it's done over time, because you had way more groups than back then than you did now. So you had every dance group had a footwork crew just about. So if you was a part of K59, there was groups like Phase 2, U5U, they all footwork. So they was considered battle crews to a more or less degree too, until they got strictly battle groups. So you had groups like the Dungeon, Wolfpack. The Dungeon wasn't even a real group, really. The Dungeon was Anthony Brown's friends that practiced in his basement, and they just called it the Dungeon because it just was social. It was like a folk tale, how legendary people spoke about his basement. You had the Fern. Man, there's just too many groups, really. I can't even haul them off right now. So many groups, man. But just all of these groups from different sides of Chicago contributed to the forum, more or less.
And so at this point, do you feel that the different styles embodied by different crews from different parts of town have been absorbed into a more generalized vernacular, like dance-wise, to where if somebody's dancing today, they might pull from any of those? Or is that sense of style associated from place still very present?
I want to say that that a lot of people, I want to say, watered down the way you actually can teach footwork to other people that aren't necessarily from Chicago. And that contributed to a slew of things. And can you say the second part? The second part of the question again?
Well, what I'm trying to find out is if the legacy of people having different styles and those styles being associated with where they're from, is that go on to this day, or has it become like all of the different styles have been kind of digested and incorporated into like a form that's kind of unified across the different areas?
No, depending on what group you in, that your specific style to your crew definitely still exists. So Creation still uses their style. Terror Squad, we still got our style. You know what I mean? Goon Squad definitely still got their style. So that still is definitely a traditional thing that still definitely happens and continues to go on. Even if you create a different style within your style that's specific to you, like I got my own way of footworking, but it's Terror Squad. You know what I mean? So it makes you intricate. Anybody can walk and just look at this group and tell, like, oh, that's a Terror Squad style, or that's a Goon Squad style, or that's a Creation style, or that's a Wolfpack style. You can tell immediately when you see it. But if you're not from Chicago, luckily enough, footwork, I would say luckily enough, but fortunately enough, footwork has expanded. So you got different crews in different cities now. So you got people in Japan that's a part of it.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Like, what happens when a group of dancers in a place like Japan makes a footwork crew?
Hey, y'all, look, funny, look, interesting enough, man. We got one Era member out there, about maybe 2 or 3 Havoc members, and all the rest are creation. So all you see is the creation, is creation style.
Oh, interesting. So that sense of a
In
style.
LA, and LA too as well. They
So
teach like creation teach everywhere. So that's the style you see everywhere.
oh, I see. So those people learned directly
Yeah.
from
They
creation.
learn directly from creation, directly.
Okay. Wow, man, this is
Ain't that
fascinating.
funny?
That's wild, man. That's wild.
Well, what's even more funny is that I taught a few footworkers in Japan as well, right? But I only got about 2 or 3 members out there with me and my team. You know what I mean? Versus them, they travel back and forth to Japan with Charles because I know back and forth to Japan all the time. You know what I mean? So they recruit members everywhere. They teach the creation form everywhere.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So this then gets into another thing that I'm going to ask you, which is so something that's also come up repeatedly in both of y'all talking about this is that it's a competitive medium, it's a competitive kind of world,
It
and
is.
there's a lot of reference to battles.
Yeah.
And so do those dance battles, clearly they happen between crews, but is there also like an actual geographic rivalry? Like,
Uh, uh, you can say it is. You can say. I mean, footworkers from Chicago. We talking about, you know, a lot of people who practice footwork in Chicago are, predominantly black. So a lot of them never been off the block or let alone out the city. So yeah, just that simple fact that we're from Chicago and you from LA or you from New York. Hell yeah, it's a competitive sport, especially with Japan. Like that's just what it is. Like a lot of people never been out the city, let alone off their block. So yeah, like they tired of battling the same people. They wanna, and then it's another thing is like everybody outside of Chicago is more or less learn from learn from creation. So it's that aspect. So when we go out the city, we got to battle creation because that's who is out here. These are just facts. This is just a fact. This is who out here. Go to Japan, it's predominantly dominated by by creation. You go anywhere in the states, kind of more or less, it's a creation member more or less out there, unless it's us or Terror Squad. But everybody else pretty much is home based in Chicago. If you're a footwork crew. Only group that have been able to travel more so have been given those opportunities was either us or creation. Creation first too.
okay, word. So then kind of coming out of this line of questioning about battles, something that
Mm.
Wills told me today on the phone was that footwork has always, in some way, been involved with um, like anti-violence or mitigating violence or somehow intervening or substituting or I wasn't exactly 100% sure what you meant by that, Wills. We kind of said we were going to save it for the cast. So I wanted to learn more about what you meant by that and how that functions. It like in the context of the medium and also in the context of battles and so on.
Yeah, I gotta let Leipold take that one again.
All right, all
Wait,
right.
wait, say the last part again.
He just wants to know how footwork saves lives, or is it
Oh man,
a violent strategy? Like, how do you describe the positive?
I mean, just think about it, man. Anytime we could have been in the streets, outside, just again, like I say, this culture was created by kids who had nothing to do. So just picture being a kid with nothing to do, and outside has everything to do. You can get into everything, whether you know it's good or bad. But we got this session to go to. We finna go practice in this basement. We got this show to go to, or we got practice 3 times out the week, or we at each other's houses practicing in each other's basement. And I'm talking about you. No matter I don't care who you was. If everybody did this in Chicago. That's more or less. Everybody was at somebody. If you was a part of the forward community, you was at somebody career practicing. You was at some part district. You was safe. You didn't have to be outside all day trying to figure out what you wanted to. You had something to do. You know what I mean? Because you didn't play basketball, if you didn't, play football, it was only it was dance. You was dancing. You was a part of a dance group, and your dance group was your family. So like me, I was a part of groups like Third Dimension. I mean, with Alpha and Omega first, that was my first dance group. You know what I mean? And again, footwork is the most non-violent thing you could see. You know what I mean? But it's the most aggressive.
Or what do you mean?
Non-violent aggressive thing you can see.
Non-violent aggressive.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful to see because you either get to see you can see all sides of emotion when you see people dance and enjoy this music. It don't matter what national, you can just see everything when you see it all in one. And that's what it's always been. If you see people letting out their frustrations when they dance. Now, has there been fights or whatever you want to call it? Yeah, maybe, but it wasn't intentional. It never was intentional. We always came with it with the purpose of dance and have a good time and positive, be positive. So there's rarely any fights that happen in footwork. I mean, but it's like any good, just like in basketball, you see people get into almost fights on the court. Same thing. It's competitive, man. Mm-hmm. You do that in the NBA or the WNBA. Women's, men, everybody competitive, man. That's just what it is. You know what I mean? It's the nature of sports. You know what I mean? I don't want to talk about football. But it's the same context. You know what I mean?
It's like it's the nature of sports, but it's also not the only thing that goes on with sports.
Exactly. It's not the only thing. It's the smallest thing that happens within the violent part.
Not the only thing. Yeah.
The violent part is the last thing anybody's thinking about.
Right. No, but I even mean the battle. I even mean the aggressiveness. Like I think it's core to footwork, the aggressiveness. Yeah. But it's not the only thing.
Well, it's not. And that's depending on the person and the mood. You know what I mean? The mood of the music might change that person, might not make them so aggressive. That's just the way.
Right.
Is an emotional, powerful, spiritual, culture.
There's a range. Yeah.
There's ranges to it. You know what I mean? Like me, I'm bipolar when it comes to footwork. You might get me in Super Saiyan mode, bub, or you might get me smooth groove jazz and did, bub. You know what I mean? You never know, because that's just what my mood might call.
When I see it aesthetically, I've never taken an aggressive vibe away from it, but I would say that it's fierce.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's fierce.
Okay.
It's like, do you understand what I'm saying? Because it's not direct, but like that fierceness doesn't come across as being directed at someone or something. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's just like a fierce expression of something that the dancer is trying to manifest, but it's like aggressive to me implies that there's a target of your aggression. Do you understand what I mean? Whereas like, and I'm not saying there isn't. I'm just saying on the outside of it, me looking in, it comes across as just a very fierce, aesthetic, emotional expression. You know what I mean? But anyhow,
well, I think we missed one point too. Is on the dance. Yeah, I think Litebulb's totally on point with saying it gives you an outlet to not be somewhere where you're getting in trouble. But I think one other point that we should add in there is just kind of the mental health that people find in footwork as a release. I think that's an important point, that it has a therapeutic and healing function to it as well.
Yeah, man. It's footwork is a teacher. You know what I mean? Like we use footwork to teach confidence. How to build yourself up and to overcome different things. Footwork can be that for you. You know what I'm saying? If you want it to be. You know what I'm saying? Like people go through so much, man, and you need something, man. You know what I'm saying? And it's cliche to say, you're from Chicago, you really need it. But man, it's rough everywhere. But in Chicago, this is us. This is our thing. Like it don't get no more Chicago than this. And when you got nothing, like absolutely nothing, you can come some tracks and dance anywhere or play the music anywhere and just lose yourself. Literally lose yourself, man. Forget everything.
And do you? I'm assuming the answer to this question is yes, but I have a follow-up. But do you derive a lot of support from your immediate community? Like if you're a part of a crew, and you're in there and you're working it out, is that a supportive relationship that you have with the other people in the crew, or are they like razzing you and like messing with you, or like how's that go down?
I don't need nobody to turn me up. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm already there. You know what I mean? But if you want to say that, you can. If you want to go there, yeah. You want to have people turn you up, but but when you're in a competitive sport like this, if it's crew versus crew, a lot of people be like get people revved up and they really be doing nothing too exciting. You know what I mean? It be just for the spirit of the moment. But that's just the competitive sport of it. You're always gonna try to still do better than who, but. That's just how it come out sometimes, but, you definitely want to get some people to rev you up and make you feel good about what you're doing. That's the nature of it too. That's all. It's all a part of it.
Right, because I asked that because you said that one of the uses of footwork is that it teaches confidence.
Yeah, it do. It
So,
do.
so is part of that the support that you receive from within your own crew? I'm not saying between
Yeah.
crews. I'm not saying between crews. I'm saying
Right.
inside of your crew. Is
Yeah.
it that you have that context?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't, this is just something that I experienced personally from people that I've worked with. Like I've used it to boost their confidence immensely. You know what I mean? Just like you got to overcome whatever shyness or fear. And I'm talking about babies too. Shyness or whatever that you're going through. You got to use this as a tool to push through. And it takes hold eventually to people. You know what I mean? And like I feel like that's what the new way of kind of teaching people instead of just trying to go home. Learn this move, learn this move. It's like, what can you get out of this that you can take with you outside of work?
Having a craft and performing and sharing it with people is incredibly life affirming, and it's been one of the most difficult things about this time is not doing that as much.
Oh man, it's
I
different.
want to add, it's really affirming, but it's also hypercritical in out here. And I mean, even in the Era or in any dance group, I think that's something that the gassing up of each other. Like, I don't think that happens, of course, like any group of friends, but like, I just find that especially footworkers are very critical. And sometimes too critical, actually.
So okay, no, because I want to unpack this. I want to understand this. So it's like a one sword sharpens the other kind of dynamic. Like you're in a crew, and it's and people might support you by giving you a hard time. Like, come on, man. Like kind of like get your game up. Like and it's like it's critical, but there's still something that's kind of building you up through that critique. Is that correct?
Yeah, I went through the tough love thing. I got tough love throughout my my upbringing. You know what I mean? Like I had to get it first.
Right.
But once I got it, then then it was
right.
Then it was that you get that tough love, and like I'm not saying that's the only way that there is to teach greatness. You know what I mean? There are other ways and other methods of doing that, but I just know that that's what worked for me.
Right, like there's nobody there's like, come on, man, you can do it. It's not like that. It's like
Boy,
School of Hard Knocks, tough like.
Boy, you weak, boy. Thought that was old? Boy, that's weak, boy.
Okay, good.
Like,
I'm glad I asked.
Like, that type of encouragement. Like, hey, like, boy, you gotta come harder, boy. That ain't it, bro. That ain't it. Nope, that ain't it. Nope.
Right. But okay, wait. But I'm gonna stay after this point though. But is there something about it like that if you really didn't have it, they wouldn't even bother telling you?
Yep. But that's there with anybody that I feel like that happens in a multitude of ways in different industries. You know what I mean? Like, your parents would tell you that if I didn't love you, I wouldn't tell you. I wouldn't even waste my time talking to you.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's a fundamental thing that if anybody, has any type of belief that you're any type of good at something, yeah, they're gonna be hard on you to some degree. I mean, we can look at the greatest people of all time. They're hard asses, like brutal. Like Michael Jordan, one of the greatest athletes of all time, is just like relentless, absolutely relentlessly competitive.
Right, man.
You know what I mean? Absolutely, like it gets no more competitive than Michael Jordan. like just the way he is, like is. But he went through that hard. Like Mike Tyson just went through teeth and nails to get where he at. You know what I mean? And people probably ridiculed and killed him for it, but he had to fight through it. You know what I mean? But they did it out of love.
But man, I'm glad we're talking about this because like, I mean, writ large, I feel like these days people are sensitive, man. Like I haven't heard anybody talk about their community like this since I can't even remember since like, do you know what I'm saying? Like when I encounter people, I run a venue, I work with communities all the time. Do you know what I mean? Most of the time when people are talking about having a community and feeling like you used the word confidence, and so then I jump to this vibe of support. And if I were to hear somebody talking about like getting support or feeling teaching confidence or whatever, that would find expression in terms of people complimenting each other. Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't know, like when all the crews and groups I work with, I don't know anybody, and I'm not saying they're not out there, you know what I mean? And it's probably not true that I don't know anybody, like certainly in certain like rap lanes and whatnot, there is this, you know, like battle rap and so forth. But like, it's becoming less common, just that vibe that you were talking about, like that ain't it, nope, that's weak. And like being able to process that as like, I need to work on this, and then working on it and then getting better, and then like that's where the confidence comes from. That to me is like a dying methodology, man. Like, Wills, do you know what I'm saying, man? Like,
I don't know. That's why I'm out here. I haven't been in New York. I mean, like, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. That's why I came out here, you know, because Vice wasn't giving me the same feedback as Litebulb was, you know. It just, like, respect to all those folks over there, but like this is the level of excellence that I aspire to with my film.
No, that's so true. If I went up to somebody after a show that's like part of a community that I belong to in some way, and I was just like, nah, man, that wasn't it, man. They would be so mad.
It's a belief in the form and the love of the form, and to see it grow, and you see somebody who doesn't take that seriously, and they don't understand what they're not taking seriously, you know, they're missing something. And maybe it relates to the struggle of life for footworkers out here. That might be part of it, you know, the stakes of what it means to footwork in Chicago. It's unfathomable in some ways for people who are outside of it. And that's what we try to deal with our work.
Well, anyways, man, I'm glad we're talking about it, because it's a reminder to me, you know what I mean, to just, you know, you put, like what you said, you put the love of the form and the aspiration above your feelings and shit. This is so important, man. Like, this part of this, I'm just saying, has been deep for me. So, but I want to
get to your feelings, bro. You get to your feelings through a mastery of the form. Then you can excavate yourself. You know, you can get to those emotions, and you learn how to put those in, and there's a lot of healing and creativity there.
Wait. So you said you get to your feelings through the mastery of the form.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
No, that is what you said. I just love this idea, because it's like people are out there trying to do stuff, and they get like a negative piece of feedback, and they get all vibed out and shook and whatever. And like, go ahead.
I'm sensitive too, but it's the only way to grow.
No, but that's such a beautiful idea.
Look, I'm not gonna say it's the only way to grow, but you know what I mean? Some of the greatest people that we know have grown through that methodology.
Without a doubt, I'm 100% agreeing with you, and I'm just saying people need to hear you guys say this, because it's like what I experience out here is a lot of really sensitive people, and if you were to come up to them after a show and be like, nah, man, nah, that wasn't it, man, they would be, it's like they just wouldn't even know how to process that. You know what I'm saying? It's like people are losing their vocabulary for that experience, which is a shame, because like, Wills, what you said is so deep, man. It's like, what are you talking about? Your feelings, you get to your feelings through the mastery of the form. That's fucking profound, man. Anyways, what I want to go from here to, because what you're talking about with the just, you know, the crews and the neighborhoods and people contributing different aspects to the form. I want to pivot and talk about the community work that you're doing with Open the Circle, because I know that you're working in a lot of the locations that have originating roles in the medium. So tell me about that. How's that going?
You want to take the lead on that one?
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, it's been amazing. Litebulb and I started this with an old friend of mine, Drew, back in the day. That was 3 years ago, and we didn't know what it meant to start a nonprofit. We just said we're going to figure it out. You know, it's another medium in a certain way, you know. And we did. We found a lot of support in the city. That's one thing that's really great in Chicago, is there is love here for Chicago things. And we're continuing to benefit from that love in all sorts of ways, whether that's working with artists or working with the city or working with youth dance groups. We've really been able to kind of create this awesome network of partners that really believes in what we do. We describe Open the Circle as a racial justice nonprofit that works, an arts and racial justice nonprofit that focuses on footwork and resourcing the communities where footwork originates in Chicago. And we do that in the first way through a summer camp. So we've started a dance summer camp that's now, next year, we couldn't do it this summer because of COVID, but we'll do it again next summer. That'll be the third summer, and that looks out for like 200, 300 kids every summer. And, you know, as Litebulb said, it's like creating these outlets and these safe spaces. It's just, it couldn't be more important. You know, we're at a point in the city where it's really an epicenter of so much that is awful. There's so much joy and beauty in this city, but there's really so many problems. You know, the violence in Chicago, especially in and upon Black communities, especially by the city, by the state, by private interests, brands, all the people that take resources out of these communities. That seems like it's been going on for longer than footwork, certainly 30 years. And so we're trying to reverse these curses and chip away at them. And you know, it's hard work. It's like last week we heard about a dance studio where 3 children we work with were shot. The week before that, another child that we may have worked with was shot. Luckily, they're all surviving, but it's the most dire circumstances in certain ways, and I think we forget to talk about that sometimes, even like when we do podcasts and stuff, because it's like not something you can think about all the time necessarily. But OTC is really designed. OTC is Open the Circle. That's our nonprofit. We're designed to use footwork for what it's always been used for, which is to bring people together, to give people this kind of mental health release, to build community across generations. And to do everything that dance has done in the Black world, you know, for 400 years, which is create safe spaces, to create spaces where agency is possible, you know, against the odds. And I think one of the greatest things we've accomplished is we've really seen an uptake in this dance among Black youth in the city, and to see the kids embrace, you know, our leadership, and to see them look up to dancers like Litebulb and some of the other dancers we work with. It's just, it's forming those intergenerational bonds, and those do help keep people alive out here. And I think, you know, it's one thing we've done is really offer it to a lot of women too, and young women, in terms of teaching footwork, and that has had a really expansive effect on the city. There's a lot more I could say, but I'll turn it over to Litebulb if you want to just pick up on Open Circle.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Open Circle's been fun, man. To be able to see, you know, to say that you got a summer camp and see the progress in the kids. You know, we've been teaching for, you know, I've been teaching for as long as I can remember, even before I even had a career of traveling and footworker. But, you know, to see the kids progress from one year to the next, you usually don't see it. You know what I mean? You teach them one time and you know, that'd be it half the time. You know what I mean? But to see them actually progress from year to year for the last 3 years is amazing. Like, they're part of dance groups now. They come into footwork competitions. They're getting in them. And some of them about winning competitions. They get to see us compete, the people who taught them. You know what I mean? And that, you know, that's exhilarating, man. You know, be able to actually compete and win too. You know what I'm saying? Win in front of the kids that you taught. You know what I mean? Like, it just puts the icing on the cake of why you should be a part of this. You know what I mean? Not a part of our group, but just be a part of it, to see the thrill of it. You know what I mean? Like, it keeps you young. You know what I mean? It makes you feel good and give you pride. It gives you all sorts of things that contribute to you as a person, that can help you grow. You know, and being in that circle and feeling that presence as a kid. Like, we went to the last event that me and Stilo, the other guy from the Era Footwork Crew, that we won. Like, all of them had on like Footwear Saves Lives, like clothes. You know what I mean?
Tell them what that is.
Save Lives is a long running campaign that the Era started, and designed by Stilo, you know, everybody else in the Era. A shirt pretty much that just celebrates footwork saving lives. And, you know, it blew up around the city, more or less. You know, everybody, you know, rocks the hoodie, purchased the hoodie. It's been sold around the world now, in, you know, different countries now, you know what I'm saying, because of our reach. And it's been, you know, just, it's became a motto of ours, you know, just how, you know, footwork is a safe haven, and, you know, and what it does for people that's a part of that community. It pretty much puts, you know, guardian angels all around you. I know I've been safe just because I'm footwork for I don't know how long.
Right.
I'm 30 now.
So when you guys first began the not for profit and the work in schools and the summer camp, did the young people in general know what footwork was, and that was something that they kind of expected and understood?
They wanted the education.
Yeah, it was interesting, right? Because we were trying to find out where the kids were. Because instead of just start from the ground up, when we targeted dance groups that already had children, we was like, where are all the kids at? Oh, they're part of dance groups. All the kids I had dancing, they already a part of groups. We went to these groups who already had over 200 kids in them. Empire, you know what I'm saying, bringing out talent. They run their own camps individually. So we just partnered with them, gave them funding for us to be able to bring our camp to them and administer it. And it was dope, man. We brought in legends. We didn't only just teach about footwork. We talked about the producing side of it, the fashion side of it, the media side of it. Because you could be a part of footwork just like you be a part of any other culture. You don't have to just dance or just make music. You can be a part of this community. Be a videographer like Wills or a documentarian or anything. You know what I mean? It's all kind of ways to be a part of it. A lot of photographers they used to footwork, believe it or not.
Right. So just so I'm sure I understand, so it was something that they already had a certain amount of fluency in when you arrived.
Yeah, they already knew about it.
Knowledge. I don't know about fluency.
Yeah, they knew about it, but they just didn't know how to properly do it because nobody was really teaching the dance or targeting them as far as what to teach. Most time, if you were a footworker and you were in the industry of dance, you would get booked to teach footwork to a predominantly white or European or community of people.
Right.
You weren't necessarily teaching your community unless it was your cousin or something like that, or your sister or your child. But 9 times out of 10, your child was a part of a dance group who isn't even getting the opportunity to experience being taught by actual footworkers.
And Litebulb, just sidebar real quick, you just had a child.
Yep.
Congratulations.
He about to be here in a little bit, man. It's the funniest little baby in the world.
Cool, man. Well, congratulations, man. I also have a family, so it's a dope ride.
It is.
You're gonna love it.
It is. You ain't lying. I had no idea what y'all was talking about. I definitely understand it completely now.
That's true, right? That's true. When you're on the other side of it, people think they know too. They're like, "Oh yeah, I have a niece. I get it." Do you know what I mean? But then you actually are a parent, and you're like, "Oh, okay." It's also interesting because it gives you a different angle on your parents. But that's for another podcast. That's for my parenting podcast. But yeah, so I wanted to ask. So I mean, this is actually kind of another thing that's like there's a saying. Really, just right now, I'm just complimenting you guys because like there's a saying that sometimes you hear floating around the culture, like art world. Those who can't do teach. Have you ever heard this? Which let me just like follow up on that immediately. Which is such a dark vibe, man. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like because like I spent 15 years really teaching a lot, and then for the last 8, I've been more or less full-time arts and culture. And I'm teaching now again, and it's like to imagine going and teaching, and especially working with kids, and feeling like drained or canceled out by that. It's like that's dark, man. It's just I've always felt like to really feel that way. Like well, if you can't really do your thing, then you would teach. It's such a negative attitude about teaching and about doing your thing.
What was I telling you, Wills? What didn't I just say this?
What did you say? What do you say?
I say it all the time. So I say, man, I got a unconscious love for teaching, right? I'm unconsciously good at teaching.
That's true.
And I don't want to be viewed as a teacher though. Because it just zaps all of your cool away. Oh, you're just a teacher. You're not an artist. You're not a performer. You're not the baby. You're not little baby. You're not saying that I really care, but I'm just saying
you're dealing with this. You're dealing with this.
I'm dealing with it.
I am too. Sam. We have a similar struggle, and I think that's kind of part of what
I don't want to be seen as a teacher, but in so many ways, that's a part of my background that I know how to teach footwork, or I use footwork to teach, more or less.
Right,
Yeah.
but I mean, this is something I've thought a lot about, having spent a lot of time teaching. I really think that this attitude about teaching and about being an artist and about making work, where people pit one against the other. Like, are you this or are you that? Like somehow being an artist and being a performer can't cohabitate with being a teacher. This is really a like a runoff from this like very capitalist attitude about success and fame. It's this like byproduct of like the record industry and MTV and TV in general, where those people don't need to do that. So, but then if you just look back at really any tradition, right, of music making, basically anywhere in the world, teaching is a part of almost every musician's practice. Do you know what I mean? Or every dancer's practice. It's like this idea, right? Like, take just some classical music. Johann Sebastian Bach. This dude taught his whole life. His whole life, this guy taught music. He's one of the most famous composers of all time, right? And then we're gonna sit here and be like, well, those who can't do, you know what I'm saying? It's like literally an idea that's like 50 or 60 years old. Do you know what I mean? That we all just like live and breathe because we see people on TV that we don't think have to teach. And I just think it's something that we just need to just let go of this darkness, man. It's like teaching is deep. Teaching should build you up, man.
I think there's beef, between teachers and artists. And I see, in kind of some ways of territory. Like, I see academics sometimes, it feels like they don't really, they want to keep artists over here so that they can kind of theorize about the art and keep their position of expertise, So like if I was just trying to be a teacher right now in the Yale way, or because I'm getting a PhD, I don't know that I would have invited Litebulb to come talk, because that industry of education rewards me for stepping in front of someone like Litebulb and fronting. Like, that's kind of how academia functions. To me, too much. So I think that some teachers actually benefit from this separation, and to their detriment. The way that I feel about it also is that let me just two more things, bro.
No, go
ahead. Like one is that I think that it's in some ways it's harder to be an artist in our society, or to make it as a career as an artist, than it is to have a career as a teacher. There are less artists with careers that the art sustains them, I would imagine, than there are teachers.
Right,
so,
but
let me just finish. So that's one.
Sorry.
So I think something I've felt is that people want to sideline you into the educational work without recognizing your creative work. And that is, I hate that. That's like, that feels really alienating, because it's the creative work that's close to my heart. And if they're just wanting me to teach something else, it feels like, well, what about what I have to offer as an individual outside of the teaching? And the last point, I want to hear your response, but my last point is, I think I love teaching. I'm going to keep doing it probably for the rest of my life. So I'm just kind of, this is an open, conversation. But the last thing I'll say is, I really think that the art is the best teacher. I think if watching, these films that Steve McQueen put out, on Amazon recently, I'm learning about filmmaking. It's like, it's just the art itself, the experience of that is the greatest learning experience for me. And so I want to create art that teaches. And so maybe there's, I don't know, other ways of reconciling.
Right, but like, I hear everything that you're saying, and I actually agree with everything that you're saying. And I would just say that I think all of those dynamics are just an expression of this fundamentally needless bifurcation between being a teacher and being an artist. It's just like somewhere people started feeling like, oh, I'm a painter, but really I'm just a teacher at Yale. Like, this person who's selling paintings for 100 racks doesn't need to have this, and they're all fucking bummed and shit. And it's just like, this whole thing is just this neurotic hang up. And it's just like, just like fuck it. It's just, you know, it's not even like I want to like really critically engage with it. I just really want to just go around this entire attitude. Also, from my experience being a full-time artist for years at a time, when I was beholden to putting out records, beholden to touring, if my agent in Europe said, look, I could do 3 weeks, I had to go. Do you know what I'm saying? It wasn't like, well, do I want to be in Europe for 3 weeks right now? Do you know what I mean? It was like, I have to do this because I have no choice. You said, because that's how I make money, right? And I actually didn't like that, man. Like, really, I mean, I think there are people who thrive on that, and respect, good for them. There are people who are just like road dogs. They love to be in the studio. They love to be on the road. They love to be doing like media spots. And like, that's really just, they're like a fish in water. I really don't feel that way. Like, I do like that, but I want to be able to just fuck off and do some other shit and just not even worry about those opportunities. And like, if I like, oh, well, if I say no to this, then maybe the next time they won't ask me. And just that kind of like, I found that when I was making a living making art, that I felt really subservient to people.
Yeah, I understand that.
Do you know what I mean? And I'd rather, it's like, yo, I'm holding down an after school teaching job with like 13-year-olds, and I'm making X amount, and I've got health insurance. So if I don't feel like doing this, I'm just not going to do it. To me, that's like a deeper cut as an artist. And I mean, I also think that working with actual youth is deeper than working in academia. Do you know what I mean? Like,
good point. Absolutely.
It's cooler. I ain't gonna lie, it's cooler. Like what I'll say to that is like, I've grown to, I mean, that's why I'm happy that we have Open a Circle, because without me depending solely on the Era Footwork Crew, I can fall back and be an executive director in my non-for-profit and do community work and create a salary, you know what I mean? Like for myself, and do something, you know, it has nothing to do with me actually, you know, performing or anything like that, or actually, you know, so it's, you know, different ways. And through the summer camp, you know, I know all the kids and I'm still competing at that. So it's like, I got that retro aspect to it, you know, like, yeah, I taught all of y'all, but yeah, I'm also the 2-time champion. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a different feel.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize I was going to get into this like fraught territory. You know, like I was really just bringing this up to say that I think what you guys are doing is cool. Do you know what I mean? But like, since we went down this rabbit hole.
You hit a nerve. You hit a nerve.
What'd you say?
I said you hit a nerve. This is what we're talking about right now. You know, this is really it for both of us in our careers as artists and teachers. It's like, that's definitely what we want to keep talking about.
That's cool, and it's a cool thing to talk about. I mean, for whatever it's worth, I think what y'all are doing is cool, and it makes what you do stand out. Also, it's like, and I spent a long time feeling that way. I spent a long time like trying to get out of my teaching job. Do you know what I mean? Like fighting to like more opportunities, more tours, more records, more press. You know what I mean? So that I could get bigger fees, so that I didn't need to have this job. Do you know what I mean? And I remember feeling that way. And at this point now, I feel like whether you're like teaching, if it has to do with your medium and your work and everything, or you're out there performing, or you're putting on events, or you're putting somebody else on, like, dude, it's all part of the thing. And I really just brought it up to say that I think you guys are incredible examples of people who have a holistic attitude about being an artist, and that's really profound. I mean, really, that's what I was trying to say.
I mean, even being a dancer, it's a whole aesthetic of just being a dancer. You get looked down upon by every other industry. You're the last to get paid. You're the last to get hit up. You're the last to get, you know, festivals getting booked a year out. You're the last to get, because you're getting hit up the week before the festival by the person, by the DJ, or by, you know, it's just being it. You got it. So I literally was like, man, I'm not doing it. I'm finna do everything. I'm finna learn. We're gonna learn how to make music. We're gonna manage ourselves. We're gonna do our own videos. We're gonna do everything ourselves, because I just despise the aesthetic that's around being a dancer. So I'm gonna elevate what it means to be a dancer.
Right. Sick. You know, this would be a good time to play those tracks.
Oh, for sure.
And then when we come back, I want to pivot again, and because we kind of went down the not-for-profit lane, so I want to pivot again and talk about what it's been like to import or take the footwork practice into these more fine art type institutions, into those settings. You know what I mean? So let's check out. We have 2 tracks from DJ Rashad that I'm about to play. Ghost legendary. Litebulb is referenced in Ghost. Litebulb, is that right?
Yeah.
And then, Wills, remind me of the name of the unreleased track.
The unreleased track is another by Rashad. It's called "Open Up the Circle," and it was one of the inspirations for
Of course. Open Up the Circle. So we're gonna take a break and play these two DJ Rashad tracks. Everybody can go get a glass of water, whatever. And when we get back, we're gonna talk about footwork in the fine arts world. All right. This is gonna take me a second. But these tracks are about to come on.
Should we go off camera, Sam?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Ghost, 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 ghost,
All right, we're back. I had to turn my mic back up. Y'all still there? Are y'all's mics on? All right, I was messing that up. You guys still there? Okay. Will, say something?
Check, check, check.
Okay, cool. There we go. Sorry. All right, not the most high-tech affair here. DJ Rashad, those tracks were incredible, as always. I remember the first time I heard Footwork, and the thought that I had was, I can't believe this music exists. It seemed like it was like something that like you had imagined without knowing that you imagined it, and then you heard it, and it felt like obviously this should exist, and then it does, but at the same time you had never heard it before. I don't know. That doesn't make any sense. Litebulb, can you explain the reference in Ghost to you?
To me,
Yeah.
The track essentially, you know, like if you had your name mentioned in the track, especially by DJ Rashad, he was like top footworker, more or less, or you know what I'm saying. And Ghost, I wasn't in the room when he made Ghost. Q and Pooh and AG was in that room. He was making that track. I just know he was extremely intense when he was making that track. And Ghost, like that move is just like that's what you want to see somebody do. You know what I mean? And like most people these days don't know how to Ghost properly, more or less. So to him, it was like a shot, like, you know, these are top footworkers, and you know, this is what I want to see. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So this actually segues nicely into what we're about to talk about, which is your guys' work in the world of fine arts. Because something that I already knew and that I really realized sitting here talking to you, which by the way has been a humbling experience, is that there's so much context, there's so much history and so much nuance and internal stuff to understand about footwork, right? Like Ghost was a huge track, right? Like I heard Ghost just as an electronic dance music track. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And people hear this word Ghost over and over again. How many of them know what it's referring to? Do you know what I mean? And
I'm not sure.
And so probably writ large, I mean, when you consider the size of the audience that track reached, it's probably a minority of people that know that it's actually describing a specific dance move in the context of footwork, right? So this losing of context, I think is like a springboard into the discussion about bringing a form like footwork into like a museum type setting. But maybe you guys don't agree. I don't know. What do you think? Like, let me put the question differently, or let me put it differently. When you take footwork from a setting like a battle, or like when you're working in the neighborhood where it came from with young people who have some awareness of it, and you do it at MCA Chicago, or you do it at PS-1, is there a loss of some kind of understanding, or does it generate understanding, or what's going on there? And how does it affect your approach to the work, or how does it affect your experience?
I can only speak from my experience, and I just know that when you see both together, it alleviates a lot of the questions because you understand it. You have to see footwork in its full context, meaning the music with the dance to understand it completely. Because if you see one without the other, it poisons those questions. Well, how does it look to what's, you know, because a lot of people that we see outside of footwork or in footwork that get these opportunities to, you know, perform at a PS-1 MoMa or anything like that, they tend to dance to other type of music. We keep it original by dancing to footwork music only, or music that we've made ourselves with the footwork DJs to highlight it. So in essence, you know, the goal is to, you know, try to mimic, or, you know, not mimic, I want to say to showcase the form together in its wholeness. You have to see it in its wholeness to understand it. If you don't, you're going to have questions.
So you feel like...
Let me answer that, bro. So I think, first of all, we should start from the assumption that like footwork doesn't only happen in one place. You know what I'm saying? Like this dance, one of the critical parts about this dance is that it could happen anywhere. You know, battles in lunchrooms or school hallways or wherever it could go down. And I think that that's core to footwork. So the assumption that it couldn't go down in the MCA there's something to that, because generally the people who come from the communities who originate footwork don't go to the MCA, don't feel invited to that space. But if they're there, it could go down. Now,
it
and it did. And so I don't think we should limit it. Now, every place that it happens is different. So in these other lanes that we're exploring is different. It's not going to be the same as going to a battle on 83rd Street or 87th Street, wherever.
People won't be there.
And we invite people to all different sorts of events too. So part of what we're doing with the fine art intrusions is like trying to create pipelines to spaces across the city that people who they don't usually go through those. People who go to the MCA don't usually go to 87th Street, and vice versa. And what we've been able to do is create these pathways for communities to move across in a city where those movements are virtually impossible. So I don't know if that answers your question. I would say also that footwork has had to live, unfortunately, in places where there are no resources. So if an average footwork dancer 10 years ago wanted to project a film of him dancing behind him and have a script, some of the resources to do that are just simply not available. We're working to make those resources available. The last thing that I'll say is that footwork doesn't only happen in battles. I said that earlier, but it's a part of a larger choreographic language that's indigenous to Chicago. So you can see footwork moves in other choreographies. You can see it on stages going back 20 years. So the idea that we're putting it on a stage, that it's somehow radically new, or that now it's avant-garde, but it wasn't before, it doesn't. We're just taking it to a new place because this is a cultural treasure that deserves to thrive in all sorts of spaces. And some of those spaces that are, where they preserve resources are fine art spaces. So we're working from contexts where there aren't a lot of resources. We're trying to bring resources in. So of course we want to be in those spaces. And of course we want to bond with other artists who historically have used those spaces for their creativity. We feel a bond there that we're so excited to be able to explore, and it could go anywhere. But I footwork is always changing. Who knows where it'll be in 10 years? There's not one way that it needs to be.
Who knows? Like he said, it's a multitude of ways that it can go, man. Especially, like us, we're working with Theaster Gates now. Who would have thought? Who would have thought the footwork crew or footworkers are working with such prestige like Theaster Gates? But we are. You know what I mean? And we're changing the perception of what people view community or culture or even artistry is. We're dancing, but we're tied to so many different things. We're a footwork crew doing festivals.
Right. I mean, maybe I should clarify my actual position. I mean, my question was, how does it affect your experience when it goes from one setting to another, right? There was not an implicit suggestion that something, I don't know, Wills, when you were talking, you seem to be addressing a number of kind of possible critiques or something, which I just want to be clear.
I don't necessarily think you're representing those perspectives, but to suggest that this is not a context for footwork, which some people have when they see footwork in these fine art spaces, that I do, and I'm not saying that you're coming from the same places where we've heard other people come from, but there is a sense of oh, why don't you guys stay battling? Why don't you guys just stay over there? Or why didn't you invite us to the battle in a place in the city where you were invited, but you would never come? So there's a tension here, and maybe I'm addressing some of those larger tensions.
I think it's
beyond your question.
I think it's good. I think it's good that that's coming up. I just want to make my position in it clear. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I come from the school of if you can do something somewhere, hold, pause.
Wherever it wants to happen at. Because there's been plenty of times we've taken the train downtown and end up footworking in front of people who were playing drums downtown outside, just panhandling outside. I mean, footworking happens anywhere. So for us, it's wherever we bring it to you, you should be happy. Not as you should, but be appreciative that we brought it to you here. You know what I mean? Because you wouldn't dare come on 87th Street. We wish that you would come over there because there's nothing for you to be fearful of. But the fact that you wouldn't, appreciate that we brought it to you here.
Right, for sure. Yo, just so you know, we lost you guys for a second because it jumped from one Wi-Fi signal to another. So let me just jump back to, because I actually just didn't hear the beginning of what you said. So where I picked you up was be appreciative of that we brought it here.
Yeah, I mean, what I was saying was like, a lot like that's up for us to decide where we want to bring it to you at. You know what I mean? Like once you become part of the community, it happens anywhere. I mean, footwork can happen downtown, but we travel downtown ourselves and footwork in front of people who are playing drums just because we were downtown at the Taste of Chicago. Somebody was outside playing drums downtown. We just so happened to make a cipher right there. I mean, footwork can happen anywhere. It has happened anywhere that we felt it needed to happen. And I feel like anybody who asks that question more than likely wouldn't dare come to 87th Street because of, preconceived perceptions about, or what people have told them about 87th Street or anywhere that footwork happens at. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like, be appreciative that we are bringing it to you where you come from.
Jam, let's unpack it a little bit because it's like, what if we asked Litebulb, okay, so you're footwork on the corner downtown randomly. Do you feel like you're decontextualizing footwork? We wouldn't normally hear that same question if he's just footworking on a corner. But as soon as it enters into this hoity-toity white space, then there's doubts like, oh, you're decontextualizing this thing that I didn't even know the context of in the first place. And so it gets, and we're pushing back because actually, as we enter these spaces, these are the types of conversations that I think are good to have.
I mean, a lot of people are asking for the raw. They want the raw. They want to be a part of, but they know good and goddamn well they wouldn't get in their car, this Honda Civic, and drive to 87th Street and come to these places where they feel I've been told it's dangerous.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, Will's heard. Yeah. I hear what you're saying. And also Litebulb, 100%. I think where I'm kind of rooting my line of questioning is because I want to be clear. Like I regard it as a positive and a value add when something is able to gain access to resources and visibility. Visibility if it has not previously had that in the way that other mediums or forms would have automatically, right? Like if you're a conservatory student studying classical music or now jazz even, it's a given that you have these types of access and this type of visibility and you're celebrated for it. Right. To if you're a jazz musician and you go study at Manhattan School of Music and then you go play at Jazz in Lincoln Center, it's just like bravo across the board. Just not even like any.
Well, in art school, if you go to Yale Art School, you're getting into the galleries. It's a pathway.
Exactly. Right. So my personal take on it, right, is anytime somebody is operating in a context wherein those types of resources are just systemically unavailable to them, and then they gain access to those resources. I personally regard that as a victory, right? Because I have my personal take on like justice, let's say, is material in the sense that I think that not all of it, but there's a lot of work to do on evening out the material reality of different people in the world, right? Like until everybody has the same amount of access to resource and opportunity, we could keep working on that. So when I see something gain access to resource and opportunity, I regard that as a victory, right? And yet I labor under the understanding that there is an active critique in academia, in the art world, in communities like the ones that kind of come into the club I run and other similar clubs and stuff that are very all right, let me back up a little bit. What you guys are arguing for, I would describe as a very convivial attitude toward art making and music and dance making. It's like, because Litebulb, what you were saying is like, when you see the music and the dance and the DJs all together, you don't have any questions. We bring the context. We make you understand, right? Now that's a very convivial attitude about sharing music and art, right? There is a very distinct kind of trend in conversation that is more sensitive to an attitude about appropriation. Do you see what I mean? That maybe doesn't completely foreclose on this kind of convivial attitude, but they do kind of at times run at cross purposes. Do you understand what I'm saying? Meaning, like, somebody might say, a museum is taking X into its doors to try to kind of get something from it or do something extractive, and it kind of robs it of its context and meaning. And there are people who feel like that's a negative, right? Now, I look at it the way you described, and the way that you described Litebulb is like, like, if a dancer before 10 years ago wanted to do something with a projector and a script and make a video of it, that wouldn't even have been a possibility. And now it's a possibility because we've opened these doors, right? But there is a counter argument in the world. Do you know what I mean? And so I'm kind of just asking you what you think about that, which and you're telling me. But I just want to make it clear that I'm not coming from that point of view.
No. I understand that you're not coming from there. I mean, it's more so just like people want things to happen on their terms. You know, like when you like, it's been that feeling of when we perform, you know, in the WURKZ at what was it, Lynx Hall. People want to be at Battlegrounds, but it's like you wouldn't go to Battlegrounds though. I know you wouldn't go to Battlegrounds, but you asking me to perform it there.
And we are performing. I mean, it is performing.
And it is performing. You know what I mean? So it's like, for me, it's like there's not enough appreciation for what people bring. It's always appreciation for what I think it should be. And for me, that's just so unfair to the art form itself. It's like, who are you to say, especially if you're not a part of it, if you're just a visual person, you know, being there, you should just enjoy it and try to find a way to exist within it instead of trying to change it to format what you think it is.
Right.
I just, for me, that's, you fighting a losing battle trying to convince everybody.
I mean, Sam, let me just try this as a thought experiment. You guys will tell me if I'm tripping, but like, let's imagine Toni Morrison is still with us, right? Let's imagine she wants to read her book to a predominantly white audience in a predominantly white space. No one's going to say to her, "Hey, Toni, why are you doing this reading here? You're appropriate. You're letting yourself be appropriated," or something like that. Like, questions like that have to be lodged very carefully. And we find, and again, this is not, I'm just kind of using your question to open up larger issues here that are not specific to you. But we find that people are a little too, some of the questions we've heard are, it's a product of what it means to invade these spaces, and to change these spaces. So we've experienced some pushback, and there's all kinds of different ways that we could talk about that pushback as we've gone into the space. And there's all different kinds of ways how we can talk about turning that pushback into new art, because that's also product. It's not just a one-time encounter. It's like, okay, well, we're getting this kind of pushback. Like, how do we negotiate this? It's it's a metaphorical dance, and that turns into real dances and real artwork, and we could get into that too.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm really happy that we're in this space in the conversation, and I want to spend some time here, because your point about Toni Morrison is absolutely right. That wouldn't even cross somebody's mind. I mean, I'm going to stop short of saying that wouldn't even cross somebody's mind, but it's unlikely that would be a go-to. Do you follow?
You get how I'm thinking with that.
Yeah, because it's like it's kind of the same thing in a sense that I said about jazz music at the conservatory and then playing at Lincoln Center. It's just like bravo across the board. It's like people aren't like pigeonholing it and saying like, well, shouldn't that be happening like in this other place? Do you know what I mean? But you know what? Let me just ask you let me just ask you to kind of go even deeper. When you say we have to be very careful about how about about how we wage critiques of appropriation, or when we bring that up, how you said we have to be like careful about how those critiques are waged or something. Maybe I'm not paraphrasing you exactly right. What do you mean? Like, what does that look like? Because I actually find that people aren't very careful about that. Do you follow what I mean? And I just want to know what you mean.
Sometimes, and this is, I'm really speaking predominantly about white folks like myself, and the dance world itself is quite white, and the museum world itself is quite white. I think I'm talking about when the conversation about appropriation is easier and more acceptable than actually wanting to learn about the art. So because appropriation and people are so policey about it right now, and in a lot of ways, I really love that. In a lot of ways, it can be to the detriment of whoever's asking that question and using that as the framework to essentially want to like critique it and feel empowered by their critique rather than wanting to learn, which is, the way that you started this up. I think it's beautiful as this is a 30-year tradition. Who are you to talk about the politics of appropriation without asking a lot of questions first, and just trying to really suss out what's going on. At the same time, appropriation is important. So it's, we're down to talk about it.
Right. I do want to reference my original question which was simply, what is that experience like for you? I mean, but maybe, you know what though, because maybe I have to nod to something that you're saying, because there was like an assumption in my question that there is context to footwork that is somehow like foundational to how it means or something. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because the way that we got into this, right, was that we played Ghost, right? And then we were talking, and then Litebulb was talking about the move Ghost, right? And then I said that when this is exposed to a much wider audience, like of people who are maybe hearing this for the first time, right? They have no knowledge. They're just hearing the word ghost over and over again. It just sounds like some cryptic, intense thing to say. Do you follow what I'm saying? Like, if they don't know that it's referring to a
dance move,
right, then they just don't know, which is like fine. Like I'm not saying anything about that. I think that's totally fine, right? But then that made me want to ask, like, when you take what you do to a place where there is less familiarity with it, what is that like? And so where I'm trying to acknowledge your point, Wills, is that maybe in my asking of that question, I am making an assumption about like the importance of that context, rather than like kind of more along the lines of what Litebulb said, which was that we generate the context when we go somewhere.
The space comes from the people, man. That's what we started out. You and I started talking about that. It's like a lot of people want to talk about the architecture defines everything that happens within it, but it's really the people who make those spaces, And so if they let us in, we're going to change the character of that space, at least for one night, but then maybe we'll get another one, Maybe our friends will come up the next day. Like, it's about what we're doing in that space. And the truth is that, like, sometimes the audiences in these fine art spaces are actually getting way more context than you would get if you were just hearing Ghost, or if you were even at a footwork battle. Like, the layering of context is actually a major, like, we want people to really feel a lot in this. We want them to have that sense of wonder that you talk about, but we want them to back that up with learning some real history about their hometown, and in the case of showing it in Chicago. So I think that sense of wonder is really great that people get when they hear a song like Ghost, but it's a question of, like, where do you go with that? Do you use that sense of wonder to learn more, or do you use that sense of wonder to kind of like keep your distance, entrench your position so that you can do something that's extractive, which is typically how these communities have been treated for 400 years. We're trying to not accept that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm fascinated by what you're saying, and again, I keep steering into these places in this conversation with both of you where your take is something that I feel like I don't hear often. Do you understand what I mean? Meaning, I feel like I hear often that when something that does not historically happen in the walls of a museum happens in the walls of a museum, that there is something inherently extractive about that, and that it's something that's kind of regarded as like there's a barbed quality about it, right? What I hear you saying, both of you saying, is that no, and in fact that what's the word I'm looking for? That kind of sensitivity, or that
You're paying too much attention to yourself, or you're paying too much attention to the history of the space and not enough attention to the art as a primary reference.
Right. But so do you feel that position functions as a critique of the of that like heightened sensitivity about appropriation?
I don't. I mean, Litebulb can speak to it for himself, but I don't think we're here to do that. You know, like I love cancel culture. I actually think it's great. I could come out and say that. I don't. You know, I think that these levels of critiques that we're trying to bring about in our society are evidence of changes. Do I think they can be taken too far or misused? Absolutely. So rather than trying to get into kind of a polemic, you know, appropriation critiques or censorship kind of argument, it's more like, how can we have those conversations in a way that's factually based in facts and transparency to the life of artists, and just, I don't know, it's like, how can we do better rather than not do it?
Got you. I hear you, and I want to say that the kind of intervention that was made in this conversation about making the assumption that the context is somewhere else rather than that the people produce the context is heard and valued. Tell me about some of what you guys have coming up in that world.
Walker.
Yeah, the Walker for sure. The Walker, Wesleyan. We've been doing stuff with Wesleyan University for the past 3 months now.
Yeah, great synergy with the folks.
Yeah, great. You know, a lot of online work. Yeah, and a lot of people are just showing interest in the show as COVID clears up, or just finding ways to virtually do work with us. That includes in the works in some capacity. So that's pretty much what's coming up. Because if COVID ever hit, we probably would be, you know, prepping the tour right now in these type of times, and we would already be on tour for In the Works. Like that's our project right now, and there's also music attached to that show as well. So it's just a very, very, very large project for us. That, you know, we're in, you know, collaboration with NIFA, of course, because they granted us, you know, the opportunity to recreate the show. So, you know, that's our biggest thing right now that we're working towards and building up, just in that lane itself. And then we're also working on some projects with Theaster Gates that'll be coming out soon. So be on the lookout for those for sure.
And then I have a project that Litebulb is starring in that I was one of the directors on. That's the biggest projection you could have. It's on the facade of the Merchandise Mart in downtown Chicago, which just kind of looks like the background of Litebulb's screen. But it's giant, you know, acres of space right above the river, and we have a fabulous projection film that we made. That includes a new soundtrack that is really dope. Basically, the way the soundtrack got created was we recorded with Angel Bat-Dweed, who's a clarinetist and luminary of Chicago jazz right now, along with Amal Hubert, who's a part of the famous Hypnotic brass band, son to Phil Caron, who's a major inspiration in terms of jazz and music. And then we also got the Chicago Bucket Boys. So we had all these instrumentalists, and then they recorded, and then DJ Spinn from the Tech Life Collective, old friend and constant collaborator, he flipped that into a new song. So, you know, a part of, you know, a kind of trend in footwork, I would say, to use live instrumentation to push the genre forward. At the same time that I think the song is well, I know it is, it's riffing on Robert Johnson's Sweet Home Chicago. So we tried to kind of take all these legacies of Chicago history, Black Chicago history, and create something new and massive. And then that will go up in 2021. But you know, it's a great example of the city getting behind what we've been doing. I think there's a lot of history of footwork and even the histories of house music not getting the recognition from the city here in Chicago, and there's been a real wave of change through our work over the last several years, and this will be a prime example of that. And we hope everybody comes to Chicago to see it, because it's going to be something to behold for sure.
Amazing. Well, fellas, we've been at it for 2 hours.
Have we?
Yeah. It's
wow.
it's about 9. If there's any other kind of important developments with the Era or anything that y'all are doing that you want to share, you know, now's the time. I'm definitely all ears, but I definitely don't want to.
Drop some new music song, man. We're gonna drop some new music.
You know what? That actually is an important thing that we didn't talk about enough, and so maybe just speak to that for a second, because the Era is also a group of musicians that you make your own tracks. So say something about that.
I mean, we just was, you know, found ourselves doing Pitchfork Festival, doing all these different festivals and stuff like that. Red Bull festivals, music festivals at that as footworkers. Doing Open Air Festival, performing, you know. And we just like, man, we up here on stage for a long time, fellas. We got to find a way to do something about this, man. Like, we up here about to kill ourselves, man. DJs, they chilling. You know, we up here about to pass out. Can't dance for no hour, Joe. We like, let's figure something out, man. And like, we naturally knew how to galvanize the crowd. Like, I was doing it for so many years with Rashad and Spinn. Like, I grabbed the microphone and get on there and start talking. And the crowd would be, you know, be with me. And, you know, so I was like, well, why don't we just start trying to make some music? I'm like, footwork is like, music is based around like chants. You know what I'm saying? Chants and catchy like ghosts. Like, it's just one word. I'm like, what if we did that? But that turned into like, man, why don't we write verses, man? Let's see what that's like. Now, granted, there are people who've made other music that have included like lyrics from footwork tracks. It's all music, right? But we was like, we actually footworkers though. Like, we actually practice footwork, perform it, battle. Like, we can get that whole perspective to footwork music and like be actual footwork artists. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, Chris Brown, Michael Jackson's in our own right. You know what I mean? It was like, we can actually write music, and like we start trying to come up with different ways to, you know, write music, you know, tell our stories on top of footwork tracks. First of all, this music is extremely fast. It's 160. So trying to rap that fast or trying to find a pace or a rhythm that actually works with footwork music is a challenge in itself. And you know, we've been figuring it out for the past 3-4 years now, trying to like, we made our own first mixtape, footwork mixtape, we called it. We called it Footwork with Words. You know what I'm saying? We're not rappers. We just dancers that's just telling our story. Like Drake, anybody else talking about how they're great rappers, we're great footworkers. So we just took that approach. We got real life experiences. If you're a footworker, you got a long life. You got a long life of being in Chicago, you know what I mean? It's a different life, man. Like, you know, it's a whole community that you're a part of, and different experiences, the way we dress, the way we talk. It's everything. We want to embody that in music and like try to just put words, songs that really have words for you to love it. And that's been difficult. You know, if you love chord music, there are really no words, really. There's certain words, but it's like really small stuff like that. Like, I also break your back or ghost. It's one word. You know what I mean? We would let's add 4 words, 4 expression. No, we're not just more attention, but we can work towards it. We actually can keep working at it. And the new music that we like, you know, the music we came out with, we was able to get press around it. You know what I mean? Like drop videos, you know, perform at festivals, you know, dance. Being able to hold it out for an hour. We went to Kuwait, performed our music in Kuwait, performed our music at Oakland. You know, I don't know. I can describe it, man. It's funny to me when you doing it. But it's like, are we doing it? It's interesting, man. We partnered with a few different companies, our music a lot, performing our music there. So it's interesting. And the new music that coming out, like we kind of went through a process of like trying to actually find like good producers. So we finally got Spinn to work with us like on actual songs, and like the songs sound way better than what they used to sound. So And now we're jumping full-fledged to like, learning about the music industry and jumping into it as dancers, So we don't know a thing about it, but we learn as much as we can, and we learn fast. We already had a way to market ourselves and push ourselves. And we just apply it. We make different relationships happen. We know a lot of different people, more or less. And, we're just trying to find, the best way to learn and grow in our own lane. Because we're not rappers. We know that. You know what I mean? We're footworkers. So
Right.
whatever that means to people.
Well, this is a really amazing kind of horseshoe, because I did mention it in the beginning, and now you kind of expounded upon it. And actually, we agreed that the closing music today would be one of y'all's tracks.
Oh, for sure, 100. That's thorough.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna let that run, but
Sure.
Litebulb, Wills, thank you for coming on Place of Assembly.
Thank you, Sam.
This has been
My
amazing,
boy.
super humbling, big learning experience for me, and I admire the work. And seems like y'all are doing amazing, and keep it up, man. So I'm gonna put these tracks on, and we'll be in touch soon.
Chicago, Sam. Let's come out here, bro.
Oh, yeah, shout out to my team, man. Shout out to my team, Manny, Stilo, P-Top. Shout out to my boy Corporate, Chicago legend here on the track. You feel me? So shout out to my boy Wills. Let's go, man. Appreciate you, Sam.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right.
Let me get this track going.
Jackson times 3. I come from grainy basements, long nights, flow, shit's creek. That's 90.
Sorry about that. All right. Place of Assembly, Sam Hilmer, Hollow, Experimental Sound Studio, Chicago, 8 Ball Radio, Wills, GLASSPIEGEL, Litebulb. We're out. Thank you.
Go hard. Look, they saying shit like we the last of a dying breed. Rooter culture like we in the backyard planting seeds. I ain't no MC. You couldn't find a rapper hitting glides as cold as me. Ghosts that make it so leave. Michael Jackson times 3. I come from grainy basements, long nights, flow, shit's creek. That's 91st Street with a great selected me. BULB when we in the streets. These niggas sleeping. I'm up at 3 a.m. stoking my thoughts. The realest creeping. But do you know the feeling? Man, you gotta come up with that income cause the pipes is dripping. I'm on my way to work, I'm labbing, boy, I'm never slipping. I solve a problem in your circle, boy, we mathematicians. I come from 4 a.m. labbing out in mom's kitchens. The folding dudes in lunchrooms and then we cop suspensions. The skates unique like when two atoms splitting. I caught the game, fastball, no glove or mitten. It's either cold winters or hot summers. You either dance or who with your man, or the streets and melt you like hot butter. Cause I'm a crowd splitter, old soul credentials, master splinter, track leaner, works is cleaner, straight out the Brita. Leaving my printer feel like a pair of cleats, so they copy me like a pair of keys. Worse out, flow side, let my talent speak, cause talk is cheap. Hey, I go hard. They say they working, we don't see them, what's your resume? They say they working, we don't see them, what's your resume? They say they working, we don't see them, what's your resume? No days off, cause I'm clocking in like every day. Say, I work hard. City know I go hard.
Niggas always talking about that, I ain't working. We don't see you
Go hard, go hard, nigga.
Hey, bro. That shit felt good. Fuck is you talking about? Type shit that put motherfuckers in their zone, you feel? Whole time, I'm drawing off the whole project, you feel me? Like, the whole little dig, like, centered around, like, solo rounds, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the whole footwork and culture, like, that shit important to the crib, you feel me? Like, I remember when I was younger at the rink, I'm talking about motherfuckers, hood cleared out, and get the circle cracking, you feel me? Man, footwork and shit wasn't never dead. Bro, I'm just keeping it alive. On God.